Okay, welcome. Hey, how's everybody doing? We're coming towards the end of Ignite, but we can't let our energy down now, can we? We still got to keep up the excitement. We got to keep up the learning. We got to keep up the networking. We have to keep up the overall dominance that we're doing here this week. So my name is John Kindervag. I am the field CTO of Palo Alto Networks. Welcome. Thank you for coming. I am the creator of Zero Trust, which is why I came over to Palo Alto Networks. I've been talking a lot lately. About a year and a half ago to extend the concept of Zero Trust and what we're doing with Palo Alto Networks out to a much wider audience. I was 8.5 years at Forrester Research, and that's where I created the concept. But I always had a very strong relationship with Palo Alto Networks. And in fact, I worked on the designs of about 30 to 40 different Zero Trust networks during my career. And invariably, my customers would choose independently Palo Alto Networks to be the backbone of their Zero Trust networks. And that's why I chose to come to this company. Now, today's discussion is called Stop Malware in Your Data Center with Zero Trust. And it turns out one of the business benefits of Zero Trust is that it will automatically stop and contain malware propagation in a data center. And I'm going to be using as the image or the example today the software-defined data center, right? Or sometimes people call it the private cloud. This works in other types of environments, but this is just the way in which we're going to talk about the examples today. So having come from Forrester, I have a lot of understanding of the integrity of the data that comes from there. And so in last year, or well, the 2016 big survey on IT, what they saw in that survey was that the majority of firms are going to have a software-defined data center. So how many people in this room today have some sort of software-defined data center or private cloud? Yeah, okay, close to a majority, right? So about 11% are upgrading and expanding, 27% are implementing, and then the rest plan to implement. Some are interested, and of course, with every survey, a lot of people don't know. And also, the software-defined data center is actually going to be contained in the private cloud as well, or in the public cloud as well. So ultimately, what I'm going to show you will translate into the public cloud in various environments. So we're going to talk about malware first, right? Because it's about stopping the propagation of malware. Why do we care about malware? Well, malware is an inconvenience. It used to be that, oh, we would get a virus and we had to clean up machines. Don't we all wish we could go back to those days when it was just an inconvenience and, oh, we got to do some cleanup and we have to, we have to re-image a few machines, and it was inconvenient. That's the best word that I can deal with it. It was an availability issue. Well, today, malware leads to data breaches. And data breaches are the biggest thing that can happen to any organization. Data breaches are super important. I say stopping data breaches, and by data, I'm talking about toxic data, data that gets you in trouble with legal or regulatory entities, right? What's going to be happening here in about 9 hours? GDPR goes live. What happens if you have a data breach of data that falls within the scope of GDPR? Really, really, really bad things. And no one is ready for it because we haven't been focusing on the real thing, which is data breaches. Now, there's other things that malware leads to, ransomware. I would argue that if I have the visibility to find and stop a data breach, I will automatically stop malware or ransomware, and then we can disrupt availability as well. And oftentimes, we've been so focused on the two things on the left, or your right, disrupting availability and ransomware, that we haven't thought about data breaches. But starting tomorrow, you need to think first and foremost about stopping data breaches. Now, there was a big data breach called the OPM data breach in 2016. OPM stands for the Office of Personnel Management. It is the human resources of the United States federal government. The OPM breach breached the information of people who had gotten top secret clearances, including their fingerprints. And I know there are people in this room who had their information stolen. The OPM data breach was the knock list from Mission Impossible 1 got stolen, right? It turns out that Tom Cruise did not have to have some funky trapeze hang upside down in a room that has all this security, that's isolated, catching his sweat so it doesn't drip on the floor, which will go off if even his sweat touches it. That room didn't exist. It was protected by an old school legacy network, and it got toasted really easy. So once the knock list was stolen, the Congress investigated, and the Oversight and Government Reform Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives did the investigation, chaired by this man, former Congressman Jason Chaffetz. He retired last June. But as a result of this, his committee recommended that all government agencies adopt a zero trust model. And he wrote a bylined article about zero trust. And he said this: zero trust would have profoundly limited the attacker's ability to move within OPM's network and access such sensitive data. This was a man who was a sitting congressman at the time he wrote this. This is why zero trust is strategically resonant. Your executive team will understand zero trust, and you will be able to deploy zero trust. But what was the attacker's ability to move within OPM's network? I mean, they hadn't been shrunken down, these little people, into subatomic particles and moved around the network, had they? It wasn't like Tron, was it? No? No? Was it? No, it was malware that was moving around. And so that's why we're stopping malware, to stop the data breaches. Zero trust is the thing that we're going to use to do that. So now, probably some of you know about zero trust, but other people don't. So I'm going to give a quick introduction to what zero trust is, so we're all on the same page moving forward. If you've seen this before, and I've given versions of this in the other 2 presentations I've given at this event, please bear with me, but we all need to kind of understand this together. So this is all about the word trust. And I've spent more time thinking about the word trust than any other human being in history, I'm quite certain. Now, it turns out that as I thought about it, I realized something that had never occurred to me, but finally just opened my mind, and that was that trust is a vulnerability in digital systems. A vulnerability. It's a bad thing to have. What do we do with vulnerabilities? Anyone? We exploit them. Okay. Which one of you is with the NSA? Just this guy here on the second row, blue shirt. No, what else do we do? Mitigate. We need to mitigate it. Why? See, trust is actually also an exploit, and it's only valuable to the malicious actors who leverage trust to do bad things on our networks. That's its only value. Trust is not necessary for you to get your job done. When I did this to one company recently, somebody said, how will the packets flow? There's no trust flag in TCP. You do not need trust to move a packet between point A and B. It is completely useless. Why do you have it? You have it because you've always had it. That's the way we've always done it. Well, we better do something differently, or we're all going to be toast. So in the old model, we had a trusted and an untrusted network. And on the untrusted network, that was all the evil people on the evil internet. Oh, all bad things happen on the untrusted network. And then on the trusted network, that's where all our people were, the people who work for us. They rode around on rainbow unicorns and gave candy to boys and girls. Oh, they're such wonderful people. Yeah, except if I start on the outside and I get past this trust barrier that doesn't really exist, and I get to the inside, suddenly I get all these elevated privileges that I don't deserve, and I become a trusted user. How do you become a trusted user? Do you do certain things and meet certain challenges and, feed the homeless? No, you move into a different part of the network. That's all you have to do. And, oh, by the way, people that we thought were trusted because, they went through the knack, right? They have the right antivirus stat file. They do bad things too. Snowden and Manning were on the trusted side of the network. So we need to get rid of this concept and go to zero trust. No more trusted networks, no more trusted interfaces, no more trusted devices, no more trusted users, no more trusted packets. Now, people will complain to me. They'll say, John, you're saying people are not trustworthy. And I am absolutely not saying that people are not trustworthy. I am saying something much, much more profound. I am saying people are not packets. People are not packets. No one has ever been on a network. The anthropomorphization of the network is the problem. The idea that John is on the network. That's a lie. I'm not. I'm standing here. I have not shrunken down into some subatomic particle where I've been transmitted by radio frequencies up to a wireless access point where I've been turned from 802.11 protocol to 802.3 protocol, where I've ridden across the internet to some other resource where I have returned all the way back and suddenly magically appeared and you couldn't tell that I was gone in that whole time. That didn't happen. So it's not about people. It's about packets. So people will say, well, oh, now I want to do zero trust. How do I get to this trust level or that trust level? You don't. There's one trust level. It's zero. Every packet has the same trust level. It's zero. Once you figure that out and you eliminate the T word, because the T word is actually a 4-letter word in digital world. If you eliminate that, it will make your life easier, because we're going to then redesign the network using these zero trust concepts. The first concept is focus on the business outcome. Businesses ask 3 things from IT. First, help me increase my revenue. Second, help me increase my profitability. And third, make sure my toxic data doesn't get exfiltrated and I don't have a data breach. Those are the 3 demands from IT. IT cares about different things than you do. How many people in this room know what spanning tree is? Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. How many people in this room thinks your CEO knows what spanning tree is? We're focused on the wrong things. Then we need to design the network from the inside out, not the outside in. We always design from the outside in. That's like having your plumber design your house, right? Because if the plumber designs your house, where are they going to put the bathroom? In the garage, next to the hot water heater to meet the hot water SLA. That's what they're going to do. You have hot water, amazing hot water. You can take showers, all the showers that you can take. But guess what? You won't have a very usable house. And that's what we've done to the business. And they got tired of it. How many people hate the cloud and wish it was never invented and we could keep it? Yeah, raise your hand proudly. Come on. A proud IT person who hates the cloud. Every IT person, every security person, we hate the cloud. Why do we hate the cloud? We hate the cloud because the businesses said, we need to do this, and we said no. We were the Department of No. Hey, can you make this happen faster? No. We want to do this? No. We were the Department of No. You know what they said in response? They said, I got a credit card. I can go to this thing that I don't know anything about called AWS. I've watched it happen. I was sitting at a dinner at an Ignite when I was at Forrester in Las Vegas with a client. Guy's got a call. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry that that's happening. Hold on, let me get out my credit card. And then the other guy says, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to throw a workload into AWS. There at dinner time, right? Who do we have to blame for the cloud if we don't like it? Ourselves, because we weren't agile enough, because we were caring not about business problems, but about spanning tree and other tactical issues. Then we need to determine who or what needs to have access to our data in order to use it. We need to enforce least privilege. Neither Snowden nor Manning needed to have access to the data they stole in order to get their jobs done, right? This idea that there are super users and admins who should get access to the data, they don't need to have access to the data to do their jobs. The only thing that Manning and Snowden could do with the data, because they couldn't use it in their job function, is steal it. And we incentivize them to steal it because we gave them access to it. If they didn't have access to it, they wouldn't be thinking, maybe I should steal this and give this to Wikipedia or The Intercept. And then we need to inspect and log all traffic, not just the stuff on the outside, but the stuff on the inside. A lot of you are afraid to know what's going on your internal network. I had the CIO of one of the world's largest companies say to me a number of years ago, I don't know what's happening on my internal network, and I don't want to know, because if I knew, I'd have to fix it. I wrote a report called Pull Your Head Out of the Sand and Pull It Out of the Swivel as a result of that conversation, because his head was pretty far up his sand, and there was no way I was getting it out. Eventually, there was a data breach, and he lost his job because he didn't want to know what the bad things were, because in his mind, fixing it was too hard. So instead of figuring out how to fix it, the answer was not to try. So the way I can best visualize zero trust is show you how the US Secret Service does executive protection. This photograph was taken January 20th, 2012, Barack Obama's final inauguration parade. And the US Secret Service knows 3 things about the president that we don't know about the data or the assets that we're protecting. Think GDPR. Do you know where your data is? Probably not. So they know who the president is. They know who to protect. They know where the president is at any given time. Do you know where all your data is? And they know who should have access to the president at any given time. We don't know the answer to that as it relates to our toxic data or our important assets. So what they've done here is, yeah, we've talked a lot about the perimeter is dead, but there's still always going to be a perimeter. It's going to be less useful than it was. But they've got one. It's January 20th. It's cold. Look at those uniformed Secret Service officers up at the top. They've all got their hands in their pockets. It's not where the primary amount of protection is going to come. No, what the Secret Service does is they define a protect surface around the president. The protect surface is the smallest subset of the shrinking attack surface that we do here at Palo Alto Networks. What do we need to protect? We put it in a protect surface. It is always orders of magnitude smaller than the overall attack surface, and it is always knowable. You may not know it, but you can always find it out. And then what does the Secret Service do? They move their controls as close as possible to the protect surface. If they were doing security for the president the same way we do security for our important assets, they'd move those Secret Service agents to the borders of Mexico and Canada, wouldn't they? Because that's where the perimeter is. But no, they move the protections, the controls, as close as possible to the protect surface. That's what we need to do. And when we do that, we can define a microperimeter around that in policy so that we control what gets in and out of that protect surface. But we're not done there. They're not done there. What they do is they continuously monitor and update that. And then they change policy in real time. When you see somebody talking into their wrist, they're not just a crazy person. They've got a microphone there, and they're talking to people who have earpieces. And what they're doing is real-time automation and orchestration of security policy. This is a zero trust model of executive protection, and it is also a visual representation of how you should do zero trust in your environment. Now, there are 5 steps to a zero trust network. The first step is define your protect surface, and we make technologies that help you do that. And then map the transaction flows regarding the protect surface, and we can help you do that. And we also have partners, of course, with all these steps. The third thing is we architect the zero trust network based upon all this information that we have. So what we're doing is architecting a network from the inside out based upon what we're protecting. And that's when the stuff goes in. That's when the tactical stuff goes in. When do you put the firewall in? When you know the answer to the first 2 questions. And then we write the rules on our segmentation gateway based upon all this information. That's Panorama. And that's getting information from Wildfire and our threat protection and all the logging service. And then we monitor that through Magnifier and then our cloud services, Evident and Aperture. So that's how we build them. Now, zero trust defines network segmentation. You see, we have to understand what we're protecting. This is the cardholder data environment of a PCI network. I'm a recovering QSA. Anybody else a recovering QSA or a QSA in the room? Anybody else done PCI? I can't believe there's no Oh, now I've got one person. One person is a QSA or former QSA. So she knows that PCI is a 12-step program, right? Am I right? So it's a joke that only works with a small subset of security practitioners. So we define the protect surface. And then we ask, what Zero Trust tells me is, why are you segmenting? Because I need to put something in a protect surface. And then I throw in my segmentation gateway. This is a gateway that collapses all the network security controls into a single platform and segments networks based upon users, applications, or data. It's a next-generation firewall. When I use a next-generation firewall in a Zero Trust environment, it functions as a segmentation gateway. And that segmentation gateway connects to the protect surface and answers the question, how are you enforcing segmentation layer 2 through 7? I have a lot of people who talk to me about segmentation, and they're kind of doing the Benihana version of it. Just chop it up into really small parts using something like VLANs, and all they have done is degrade the performance. And then they say, well, we're going to protect it with IP tables, ACLs at layer 3. Oh, really? Huh, like we didn't know how to get past that in 2002, right? We need to enforce segmentation all the way up through layer 7. And then we can have a centralized management that ties all that stuff together, and that defines our micro-perimeter, and we have got a Zero Trust network, and then we can add onto it and augment it and build it and grow it. That's what we're doing in Zero Trust. In fact, Zero Trust is not a rip and replace, and in fact, it's not even that expensive compared to other things that you will do in technology, because we're going to take your existing network and we're going to augment it with Zero Trust. We're going to move everything over. We're going to create a Zero Trust network for a particular data type, our cardholder data in this case. We're going to get it up and running. We're going to transfer over the production data, right? So when you're doing test work with some kind of toxic data, always use test data, never use production data. It doesn't matter what the Ricky Bobbies of the world say. Ricky Bobbies, those are the DevOps people. I just want to go fast. I got a cougar sitting next to me and I'm blindfolded, so just let me go fast. That's all they care about. Do they run? Yeah, they're going to run into a house once in a while, but they'll get back in the car and go fast. So we need to help those people build those things securely. And then we'll cut that over into our existing network. Then we'll grab some other data type, some other asset class, some other application or service, and move it into our Zero Trust network. So organically, our Zero Trust network gets larger and larger, and our legacy network gets smaller and smaller. And then when we're extending it into the public and private clouds, what we're doing is we're learning lessons, right? So what happened was, with the creation of next-generation firewalls, suddenly there was a thing called a physical segmentation gateway. And so the early Zero Trust networks were all at the physical layer. But at the same time, we saw the rise of virtualization. A vSwitch, a hypervisor, and a workload. That's a virtualization stack. And so we had Palo Alto Networks, like I said, was my go-to segmentation gateway of choice, even at the beginning of Zero Trust. And this defines ultimately the private cloud. And then we had a public cloud. Now, think about a public cloud as someone else's virtualization stack that you're putting your own toxic data in. And we were really struggling to figure out how to secure public clouds until we started to understand how to secure software-defined data centers. So the rise of virtual network technologies like, say, VMware NSX allows us to take a virtual segmentation gateway and transparently insert it into the virtualization stack and control policy. And then we can manage our physical and our virtual stack at the security level with the same policy statement based upon users and applications. And we can do this same thing in a private data center, in a public cloud, where we do transparent service insertion of a virtual segmentation gateway. And as we move workloads around in a system, now what will happen is the policy will move with the workloads. That's the promise of Zero Trust. So there's a number of business benefits of Zero Trust, and the two of them we're going to talk about today are stopping malware propagation and its sibling, stopping data exfiltration, okay? And so if we start with stopping malware propagation, right, think about ransomware. Think about ransomware. Ransomware can propagate because we don't see it until it's too late. It's invisible to us because it takes advantage of a broken trust model in a legacy network. So in a traditional network, malware is pretty easy to drop because there's no internal controls. Everything in the middle is invisible. No one sees that, right? And so what happens is the command and control controls the malware, and then we start to see it move, right? And we think that, oh, it's somehow automagical, but in reality, typically, command and control channel is somehow using the existing routing and switching infrastructure to move malware around. It goes north and south and east and west and southeast and northwest all at the same time. And we think that there's lateral movement happening because that's when we see it, when the malware outbreak happens. But it actually used the whole internal network to move around, and we never saw it because we didn't have visibility and control there. Now, in a software-defined data center where we have our virtual network infrastructure that allows us to leverage an interaction between our physical segmentation gateway and our virtual segmentation gateway together, we can change the model here. So malware on a next-generation firewall, it's really hard to get past that, especially ours. That gets thrown up to wildfire. It's pretty hard to get it past a physical segmentation gateway. And if you think about ransomware at the network level, ransomware has to go through your existing gateway, your existing perimeter firewall at least 3 times to be successful. One is the original malware drop, the second is the setup of the command and control channel, and the third is the key exchange for the encryption of the malware. 3 times you had an opportunity to see it, but because you weren't looking for it, you never did, and you think it just magically got on your endpoint. So we can stop that on the edge of the internet connection through the content filtering capability, including wildfire of the Palo Alto Network's next generation firewall technologies. But let's just say somebody brings in the ubiquitous USB key that everybody asks about. Oh, well, what's going to happen there? Well, the malware, even if it gets there, it's stopped by the virtual segmentation gateway, and it can't move. It is contained within a microperimeter. Now, you may choose to clean it up, or you may choose to leave it. Sometimes we'll see that kind of malware pinging outside, trying to get outside of the microperimeter, but there's no rule to allow it. There's no outbound rule that allows that. So we'll just see that some anomalous activity, this particularly weird protocol, is trying to go outside and hit the next hop gateway of that asset. And you go, oh, there must be something going on there. Now, if you had traps on that machine as well, it would never have happened anyway. But we're just showing how the zero trust network automatically stops it by design. And so you can go in and clean it up, or if you don't have time, especially in a virtualized environment, you have a great piece of antivirus. It's called Snapshot. It's great, right? That's the antivirus you need on virtual systems, snapshots. So restore the old one that maybe is just a few seconds old. And then we also cut the C2 communication, right? You see a lot of things where there's malware in the system, we're worried about that, but no one is looking for the command and control. And that is a flaw. We have to look for the command and control. So it is this idea of lateral movement and east-west traffic that we talk about, and it has meaning in an analog manner, but it's not really how everything works. It's not how the routing and switching infrastructure inside your organization works. So you need more and more internal visibility. And of course, when we tie in our magnifier tool and we use our technology to function as sensor networks, and then we tie it all into the app framework, we even get more and more visibility. So this is why the platform approach is so powerful for you as the end user, and so important for me as I'm extending the ideas around zero trust to the world. Now, we have data exfiltration. Super bad. That is the world's worst thing that could happen to your organization. In fact, I would argue that our industry, day one of our industry, is the day that the target breach was announced. Everything prior to that is BT. We're now in the year 4AT. That's when time starts in our industry. Why? Because the CEO of a major company was fired because of a data breach. Never happened before. And it only happens because of data breaches. Sony's had a CEO fired. FriendFinder, not FriendFinder, what was the other one that was? Ashley Madison had somebody fired. Sony again, a different part of Sony. Equifax, right? They've all had CEOs fired because of a data breach. Now, CEOs don't get fired because of malware, right? See, the CEO of Maersk didn't get fired because of the ransomware attack that cost $300 million. I'm sure he fired people because of that. I know of a company just yesterday fired one of their executives because of an attack, but the CEO was left untouched because it was an availability issue, not a data breach. So the only thing that can get a CEO fired is a data breach. That's why day zero of cybersecurity was Target. I often have people kind of complain, well, I've been doing this for 30 years, so, you know, don't tell me anything new. Okay, that's fine, because, man, I've only got 6 months experience in this business, right? I have the last 6 months, which was meaningful. I have the next 6 months, which I'm focusing on, and then everything before then, those are stories that we'll tell over dinner and drinks. That's how we have to think about it. We can't be complacent because we have an adversary that is highly automated, highly sophisticated, highly educated, highly trained, highly motivated, and makes lots and lots of money doing this. So we have to change. So data exfiltration, it's the same thing that's happening in Zero Trust. I want you to understand something about data exfiltration. I want you to understand how to measure success. There are only 2 true effective metrics in our business. The first one is, has your systems been infiltrated by malicious actors? That's the actual definition of an intrusion. See, our industry gets it wrong. We think that's the definition of a breach. A company just announced their Breach Mitigation Technologies report. And it was all about intrusion detection in a different way. We think breaching means somebody has breached the castle wall and they got into our castle and they've captured the flag. Yay, they're inside. They breached us. The term breach doesn't mean that anymore. Breach is now a term of art of legal and regulatory entities. And it always means that your toxic data has been exfiltrated from your networks of systems into the hands of a malicious actor. That is the term for breach. It started with California State Bill 1386. It's in PCI, it's in GDPR. What gets you in trouble? A data breach. Doesn't matter whether somebody comes in and captures the flag, can they get the flag out? Right? And we don't think that way. We think that breach is the old thing. Somebody got in, right? We got to worry about them getting out. I know of one company, and they had an intrusion. And that intrusion was by a Russian cyber criminal organization. And they came in and they were able to get a hold of the data, but they were really struggling to get it exfiltrated. And they weren't struggling because there were controls in place to get it exfiltrated. They were struggling because the network was poorly configured. So like good citizens of the world that they were, they reconfigured the routers and the switches and the firewalls to make them perform better, and then they could exfiltrate the data so everybody's walking up to Bubba and saying, Bubba, I have never been able to get to Facebook faster than I have today. You are an awesome IT person. And Bubba was going, oh yeah, man, I rock. And then suddenly the FBI comes in and said, hey, how come all your important information, we found it in Russia? What? What are you talking about? Everything was fine. The network didn't go down. Of course, everything must be okay. You know what, folks? Unexplained uptime could be an indicator of compromise. So we need to stop data exfiltration. That's our job. So when we think about data breaches, we can stop them with a zero trust network because in a zero trust network, all traffic is inspected by a segmentation gateway, layer 2 through 7, at least once during this transaction lifecycle. We're cutting off by default command and control. We're using threat prevention and DLP to look for compromised credentials and data exfiltration. And then all that telemetry is logged and sent to the logging service and to Magnifier for in-depth analysis. That's what we're doing to solve the real problems that we have in cybersecurity today. I can't say it enough. You must understand the difference between an intrusion and a breach. You must understand what is myth and what is real. You must understand the value of zero trust as a strategy to your business. And you must understand this is implementable today using our platform as the foundation of your zero trust network. Now, when I joined the company, January 20th, 2017, I got a number of emails and I was contacted by friends of mine, and they said, wow, you know, maybe while you're there you can influence Palo Alto Networks to get rid of that prevention message. Don't you guys know that prevention is dead? Prevention is dead, really? I kind of like prevention myself. And that's kind of why I came to the company, because this is the only company that still believes in prevention. But here's the problem with the statement that we all hear all the time: prevention is dead. We just should do detection and response. Focus on detection and response. You all have heard it. I know you have. Prevention is dead. What are we talking about? Prevention, what are we trying to prevent? Right? Are we trying to prevent volcanoes erupting in Hawaii? Are we trying to prevent sunspots? How about Ebola? Maybe that's what our country should do whenever there's an outbreak. Well, prevention is dead. We can't prevent Ebola anymore. So instead of focusing on trying to create some vaccines or some medicines, you know what we're going to do? We're going to detect and respond. We're going to find people who can diagnose Ebola, and then after the people die, they can do an autopsy on them, and then they can dig their grave. See, if the people who teach that detect and respond thing, all they would be focusing on is morticians and medical examiners and grave diggers. We need more grave diggers. That's their response. That's not what we need to do in our industry. We don't need more grave diggers. We can dig our own graves. What we need is to focus on prevention and understand, what are we preventing? An intrusion or a breach. Those are the two things that we're talking about. Now, can you prevent every intrusion? No, you can't. I agree with that. I can't prevent every intrusion. And a lot of our competitors, because they can't actually prevent anything, they're just saying, I'm going to detect this stuff. They're the rainbow unicorns of cybersecurity. Yep, yo. Here's a stack of needles. There might be an important needle in this stack of needles. You guys figure out which one's important. That's your problem to operationalize it. We're giving you all the information. Oh. That helps the customer. So what do we do? Well, we better be able to start detecting breaches. But most importantly, we better focus as our grand strategy stopping and preventing successful cyber attacks that lead to breaches, or else you'll end up in the news. You'll be the next Target, the next Yahoo, right? Yahoo was a data breach as a coupon. Verizon went in and said, hey, we have a big data breach. Oh, here's this big coupon for $300 million off the cost of acquiring the company. It destroyed shareholder value. These are real business problems. We need to focus on these things. If anybody ever says, prevention is dead, we need to focus on detecting and response, ask them, what are you preventing? Intrusions or breaches? Because aspirationally, if we don't focus on preventing breaches, we will never survive. This is about protecting our digital way of life. You've heard that statement over and over again. And I believe that this company, in its very core, in its very being, in its very DNA, believes that, and it's not hype. I've sat down with Mark McLaughlin and Mark Anderson and Nir Zook and all the leaders, and I've talked about that, and I've heard their messaging, and I talked about that before I even came over here, and I believe that that's our singular commitment to you, our customer base. So this is a 21st century zero trust network. It's segmented. but we know why we're segmenting, and we know how we're enforcing this segment, and we can segment in a physical data center, in a software-defined data center, in a private cloud, in a public cloud. It doesn't matter. The zero trust principles apply to everything. There's my contact information. I got about 10 minutes for Q&A, so who's got questions? And you can ask any question you want. You can't hurt my feelings. You can't imagine some of the things people have said to me over this, because a lot of times people are very upset that I'm moving their cheese, right? And I am. I'm a professional cheese mover. I am going to move your cheese. But I'm going to lead you through the maze, and I'll give you a couple of extra pieces of cheese when we're done, okay? That's the value of zero trust. Right here on the front row.
So you got a zero trust network, and you have your sensitive data protected, but you got a user that wants to take some of that data to work on their own PC and then put it back in. How do you handle that?
When we're looking at data security, the question is, okay, somebody needs to download some data and use it on their PC. We need to think about the toxic part of the data. And there's 4 types of toxic data, as I've defined them when I was at Forrester, because I ran data security and privacy as well. And I call them the 4 Ps. PCI, credit card data. PII, personally identifiable information. PHI, personal healthcare information. And then IP, intellectual property. So in those cases, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to kill the toxic data string that's in that system. So if you have a document and it's got a bunch of social security numbers and credit card numbers, either no one should be using that document in clear text, or what we can do is we can encrypt or tokenize just the clear text string so that it exists in that document in a format preserving encryption or tokenization manner so that they can't exfiltrate that actual toxic data. So we're looking at the toxic data strings to solve that problem, right? Next question. Yes, sir.
Although half question, half comment, really we're talking here about data centers, but a lot of this also verges up with what companies like Google are starting to do with their Beyond Corp initiative, where they're applying those same preferences, trying to squeeze as close to both endpoints and service as possible. Any comments on where some of that may overlap?
Well, Beyond Corp is a subset of Zero Trust. In fact, it was inspired by Zero Trust, and a lot of the stuff that I've done over the years, Google said, go read John's stuff, go to Palo Alto Networks and build a Zero Trust network. So Google is focused on one, in Beyond Corp, not in Google, it's not overarching in Google, but in Beyond Corp, they're focusing on the authentication aspects of Zero Trust. So we had already defined by that time Zero Trust identity when we were at Forrester and things like that. So we want to understand identity at a high level so that we can leverage things like user ID to write very high-level abstracted policies. And I work closely with Google. I just recently gave the keynote at the Google Cloud and Trust Summit. So I haven't been able to get them, even though they talk about Zero Trust all the time, and Ben Fried has been advocating that. He's the CIO at Google. They still haven't actually eliminated the T word from their vocabulary yet. But hey, I appreciate them extending the discussion and getting it going. And so they're focused on one part of it, right? Also, people who try to do that say, oh, I can't do it the way Google does, and that's right. They have a ubiquity of workloads, and they have a couple thousand people dedicated to that. So we're offering you an off-the-shelf way to accomplish that. And unless you want to build a competitive cloud to Google, which people have tried and failed, and some people are saying, I'm going to partner with it, or whatever you want to do, that's fine. But it's part of Zero Trust, absolutely, and inspired by Zero Trust. Other questions? Wow, less questions in this audience than the last one. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming out. Hey, thank you for coming to Ignite, for being a Palo Alto Networks customer. We really do appreciate your business. We're honored that you take the time out to do this. We're committed to your success, and we're committed to driving innovation in the cybersecurity world. Thank you.